Hey guys, welcome back to Little Farm in the Forest. If you're new here, my name is Kate, and as promised from our last video that we did our herbalism gifts, we are back with our cayenne and ginger infused coconut oil, and we are going to make our salve today. So I have already heated up my coconut oil to be able to strain it out. I let it sit for a few days on warm in the crock pot, and then I just turned it off and let it re-solidify. So I heated it back up to get it back to a liquid, and then I strained it through a fine mesh strainer with a coffee filter to catch any of the dried spices. And now we're left with this gorgeous color oil. So you can see it's already kind of starting to re-solidify. My glass is cold, and I accidentally added some beeswax to it already. The purpose of the salve is to promote blood flow. There's a lot of literature out there regarding the analgesic, which means pain relieving properties of capsaicin, which is found in the cayenne pepper, and some of the anti-inflammatory properties of the shogaol, which is found in the ginger. I'm going to show you guys how I'm going to make the salve. I already added a little bit of the beeswax by accident, but I remember how much I added before I remembered I was supposed to show you guys what I was doing. So I'm going to show you guys how I'm doing the double broiler method to melt the beeswax in. And I'll see you guys right back. I'm going to get you situated so you can watch what I'm doing. Okay. So I have my double broiler set up here, which is just a little pot with some water in it and a bowl on top. And I have roughly about 6 ounces or 3/4 of a cup of my infused oil. So I've already added 1.5 tablespoons. I'm going to add 1 more tablespoon. And if I don't like the texture, I can always remelt this down and either add more oil or add more beeswax. Sometimes you just have to play with it. So beeswax does take a minute to melt down, and you really want to give it a good stir. You want all of the oil and the beeswax to be very well incorporated, or else it'll settle kind of weird. And then over here you can see I just have some clean, I think these are 2-ounce tins. So this should get me 3 to 4. I had a little bit over 6 ounces. So this should get me about 4 tins. And because this is such a warming salve or a muscle rub, or a balm, whatever you really want to call it, I like to use this, especially in the winter months when I'm working outside and I'm getting achy and stiff from the cold. I just find that it helps promote the blood flow to my muscles. It helps promote the relaxation. Sometimes like my skin just hurts from the cold, and this just kind of causes a little bit of a warming sensation. It's not going to be as noticeable as if you were to buy like a capsaicin patch from the drugstore. And I feel like I shouldn't have to say this, but because this does have cayenne powder in it and we are extracting the spicy part of the hot pepper, this should not be used anywhere near your face, eyes, mouth, other sensitive regions. But I do feel like I have to put that disclaimer out there. And it's also not meant to diagnose, treat, or replace any type of medical care, intervention, or medication that you may be on. And you can always consult with your practitioner before you start using this if you think it's something that might be beneficial for you, and get a second opinion or even a third or fourth opinion. I'm just here to talk about the plant chemistry. Okay, so the beeswax has melted, and I have stirred this pretty well just to make sure it's very well incorporated. If you have ginger essential oil or chili essential oil, you can also add it into this. You may have to add a little bit more beeswax with the addition of the oil. I did add a little bit of ginger essential oil just because I had some on hand, and I'd rather smell the ginger than I would the cayenne and the coconut. So now I have my oil all mixed in, and I'm going to pour it back into my measuring cup just because it makes it a little easier to pour it into the little salve. I'm going to go ahead and start pouring them into my tins. Okay, so I had roughly about 6 ounces, between 6 and 8 ounces, probably a solid 7 ounces. I'm going to try to split it up as evenly as I can between these 4 tins. I might only get 3, but that's okay. I didn't make a super big batch. And I basically just leave these to sit on the counter overnight. I'll put a paper towel or something over them just so nothing flies into them. And then in the morning, I'll put their little lids on, and I'll put a cute little sticker, and then I'll send them out as Christmas gifts. And it really is as simple as just infusing the oil, adding your beeswax, and then pouring it into a little tin. If you don't have a little tin, Those little half-size jelly jars are perfect. I'm just gonna let this set overnight and then I'll put the lids on them in the morning. Okay, so we're gonna let those solidify overnight, and then this is the first batch I made. Not quite as red as the oil you guys saw over there. I decided to up the concentration of the cayenne pepper versus the first batch I made just because I felt like it needed a little bit more heat to it. And so there's a couple things I wanted to mention about this. One, if you have very sensitive skin, this probably might not be for you, especially if you already know that you're prone to irritation or you have a sensitivity to ginger or cayenne. The other thing to note is when you apply this, be very mindful. Wash your hands before you touch your face, mouth. There is capsaicin in this. It can get very spicy, it can burn you. And then the other thing is you could use a blend of oils. Like if you wanted to add almond oil or jojoba or even like a shea butter, cocoa butter, it's just important to know when you have to infuse an oil with the quick method, how we did it with the heat, to know your smoke points and how sensitive that oil is to heat. And that's why I did it on a very low setting. You do not want your oil popping or smoking. You do not want to scorch the oil. You do not want to burn anything. So just make sure you're aware of the temperature that you're doing it at. If you're doing the slow infusion method with like almond oil or jojoba or avocado oil, then you don't have to worry about that so much. But it is something to keep in mind. You can ruin a batch really quickly or get some off smells if you overheat the oil. So I'm just going to let these settle overnight. I like to use this preventatively before I go and work outside during the cold. So we are doing a lot of our projects during the winter. That's when I actually prefer to do a lot of my work outside is in the winter. I would much rather be cold than hot. And I will put some of this on the joints that give me the most problems or the areas where I stiffen up, such as the back of my neck. Just immediately kind of notice the difference of when I use it versus when I don't. So when I put it on before I go outside into the cold, there's that little bit of a warming sensation, and then you can kind of just feel the blood flow kind of make its way to the muscles, and I don't feel myself clench up or like get as tense outside. Now, when I start moving around outside in the cold, obviously I warm up, but this helps me kind of get over the initial shock of the cold. So that's what I use this mainly for, is before I go into the cold, but it's also great from when you come back inside from the cold. If you wanted to do like an icy hot version, you could get some menthol crystals, like cosmetic grade crystals, and melt them into the oil, and then you'll have like a icy sensation, a cooling sensation on top, and then the warming sensation in the muscles. So I think this is a fantastic gift idea. I like to buy the tins because they're smaller, they're a little bit more compact, and I like to be able to move them around with me and they're not as bulky as a jar. I don't think we're going to do a pantry chat for a little bit because we're actually starting on some projects outside. We are taking measurements and making a list to get the apothecary built. That way, I have a more formal shooting area and I can work on projects with you guys and not kind of be all over the kitchen. And that way, I'll have a designated space for everything. Everything will be in one place. And then we're also going to start talking about the forest. So we're starting to do some cleanup and marking out where the garden is going to go inside the forest and just getting ready for the spring. We're applying to markets and that's super exciting. So I'll keep you guys up to date with that. If there's ever a plant or an herb you'd like me to cover, just leave it down below and we'll research it and learn about it together. I'll see you guys for the next video. Bye.